Have you ever felt that you are only valued when you are useful, when you are helping, when you are working, when you are strong, when you are carrying things no one else can see, and when you finally become tired, do you wonder if you still matter? Tonight's story is about an old, crooked tree that everyone called useless. The woodcutters walked past it because it could not become a beam, a door, a cart, or a tool, but because it was useless to them, it remained alive. It became shade for travelers, a home for birds, a shelter for the tired, a quiet place where life could gather. This is a Taoist story for anyone who has been praised for being strong, but not protected when they were tired, for anyone who has been needed, but not truly seen, and for anyone who has wondered whether they are still worthy when they stop giving. So tonight, let the world measure somewhere else. Here, beneath the old tree, you do not need to prove your worth. You only need to breathe. And now, we begin. The story. Long ago, in a quiet village at the edge of the mountains, there lived a young woman who believed she was falling behind. The village was small, but the expectations inside it felt large. People were praised for many things: for being clever, for being strong, for being quick, for being useful, for knowing what to say, for knowing when to remain silent. The young woman tried to become all of these things. She tried to be helpful before anyone asked. She tried to be pleasant when she was tired. She tried to be strong when she was afraid. She tried to carry pain quietly so no one would be burdened by it. But no matter how much she gave, she often felt as if she had failed some invisible test. When she worked, she wondered if she had done enough. When she rested, she felt guilty. When others were praised, she quietly asked herself what was missing in her. At night, she lay awake beneath the stars, thinking, "What am I good for? What use am I? Why can I not become the kind of person others seem to value?" One autumn morning, when these thoughts had become too heavy to carry indoors, she left the village and walked toward the mountains. The air was cool. Mist moved slowly between the pines. A narrow stone path followed a stream, where water moved over rocks without hurry. After some time, she came upon a group of woodcutters. They were examining trees along the mountain path. One tree was tall and straight. "This one will make a fine beam," said a woodcutter. Soon, the tree was marked. Another tree had fragrant wood. "This one will sell well," said another. It too was marked. A third tree was slender and smooth. "This one will make good poles," they said. It was also marked. The young woman watched as the men moved from tree to tree, judging each one by what it could become: a beam, a pole, a wheel, a door, a tool, a thing for use. At first, she thought this was simply the way of the world. A good tree was useful. A valuable tree was chosen. A worthy tree was taken. Then, farther up the slope, she saw an enormous old tree. Its trunk was thick, twisted, and uneven. Its branches bent in strange directions. Its bark was rough. Its shape was irregular. It was not straight enough for a beam, not smooth enough for fine wood, not slender enough for poles, not fragrant enough to be prized. The woodcutters glanced at it and laughed. "That one is useless," one of them said. "No carpenter would want it. No builder would buy it. No house could be made from it." And they walked past without touching it. The young woman stood still. The old tree remained. Its roots gripped the earth. Its branches spread wide over the path. Birds nested in its hollows. Moss grew along its bark. A wide patch of shade rested beneath it like a quiet room. Something about the tree troubled her. Something about it also comforted her. As she stood there, an old traveler came slowly along the path. He wore a plain robe. His sandals were dusty. His face had the calmness of someone who had seen many seasons and had stopped arguing with most of them. He paused beside the young woman and looked at the tree. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. The young woman looked surprised. "Beautiful?" she asked. The woodcutters said it is useless. The old traveler smiled. Yes, he said, that is why it is still here. The young woman did not answer. The traveler sat beneath the tree and rested his back against the trunk. After a while, she sat nearby. Above them, the branches moved gently in the wind. The old tree made no effort to impress anyone. It did not straighten itself. It did not apologize for its shape. It did not ask the woodcutters to reconsider. It simply stood where it had always stood. The young woman said, "But if a tree cannot be used for anything, what is its purpose?" The old traveler picked up a fallen leaf and turned it between his fingers. The woodcutters asked only one question. He said, "Can this tree serve our plans?" He looked up into the branches, but the mountain asks different questions. The young woman listened. The birds ask, "Can we nest here?" The tired traveler asks, "Is there shade?" The soil asks, "Will these roots hold the hill when the rains come?" The child asks, "Can I climb?" The wind asks, "Can I sing through these branches?" The old traveler placed the fallen leaf gently on the ground. The tree itself asks nothing, he said. It simply lives. The young woman lowered her eyes. The words did not rush into her like advice. They entered slowly, like water entering dry soil. She thought of her own life, how often she had judged herself by the questions of woodcutters. Can I be useful? Can I be chosen? Can I be praised? Can I become straight enough for someone else's design? Can I be made into something that proves I deserve to remain? The old traveler seemed to know where her thoughts had gone. He said, "People suffer when they confuse usefulness with worth." The young woman looked at him. "A tool is valued because it serves a purpose," he continued. "But a life is not merely a tool." The wind moved softly through the branches. "Some people are praised because they are easy to use," he said. "They do what others expect. They bend themselves into convenient shapes. They carry too much. They give too much. They become tired, and the world calls them good." The young woman felt her throat tighten. The old traveler's voice remained gentle. "But the Tao does not measure life only by productivity. The Tao nourishes the crooked branch and the straight one, the hidden root and the open flower, the silent stone and the singing stream." He touched the bark of the old tree. "This tree is not useless because it has no value," he said. "It is called useless because it does not fit a narrow desire." The young woman looked at the great trunk. It was scarred, it was bent, it was imperfect, but it was alive. More alive, perhaps, than many straight trees already carried away. She said quietly, "I have often felt useless." The old traveler did not look shocked. He did not rush to correct her. He only nodded, as if she had said something very human. "I thought," she continued, "that if I could become more helpful, more successful, more needed, then I would finally feel safe." The old traveler waited. "But the more I try to become useful to everyone," she said, "the more I disappear from myself." For a long while, neither of them spoke. The stream below continued to move around stones. Birds shifted in the branches above. Far away, a woodcutter's axe struck another tree. The sound echoed once, then faded. At last, the old traveler said, "There is a kind of usefulness that gives life, and there is a kind of usefulness that consumes it." The young woman looked at him carefully. "A cup is useful because it is empty enough to hold water," he said. "A valley is useful because it is low enough to receive rivers. A room is useful not because of its walls, but because of the open space within it." He smiled faintly. "But if a cup is never allowed to be empty, if a valley is filled with stones, if a room is packed until no one can enter, then even usefulness becomes a burden." The young woman thought about all the times she had filled herself beyond what she could bear, with duties, with guilt, with fear, with the need to be approved of, with the need to be needed. The old traveler said, "Perhaps you do not need to become useless. Perhaps you only need to stop being used in ways that empty your spirit." The young woman closed her eyes. The words were not dramatic. They were not grand, but they landed somewhere deep. She leaned back against the old tree. Its bark was rough behind her. Its shade was wide. Its presence was steady. For the first time in many days, she did not try to solve herself. She did not try to improve herself. She did not try to turn her pain into a lesson quickly, as if even suffering had to become productive. She simply sat beneath the old tree. After a while, a bird flew down to a low branch, then another. Then a small child came up the path with his grandmother. The child ran toward the tree and placed both hands on the trunk. "This tree is still here," he said happily. The grandmother smiled. "It has been here since I was young." The child sat in the shade and ate a small piece of fruit. The old traveler looked at the young woman. "Tell me," he said softly, "is the tree doing nothing?" The young woman watched the child. She watched the birds. She watched the grandmother rest her hand against the trunk, as if greeting an old friend. "No," she said, "it is not doing nothing." "What is it doing?" asked the traveler. The young woman thought for a long time. Then she said, "It is allowing life to gather around it." The old traveler smiled. Yes. The sun lowered behind the mountains. Lantern lights slowly appeared along the path. The woodcutters had gone. The trees they marked would be carried away, but the useless tree remained, holding birds, shade, memory, moss, insects, wind, and the quiet rest of travelers. No one had chosen it for a building. No one had praised its straightness. No one had measured its worth in coins. And yet, the evening seemed to gather around it as if it were a small world. The young woman stayed until the first stars appeared. Before she left, she touched the old tree gently, not because she understood everything, not because her pain had vanished, but because something inside her had softened. She realized she had spent much of her life trying to become a tree someone would cut down, straight enough, useful enough, acceptable enough, needed enough. But perhaps survival was not failure. Perhaps being left alone by certain demands was a form of mercy. Perhaps being unsuitable for the wrong purpose allowed a life to remain whole. As she walked back down the mountain path, she still had worries. She still had responsibilities. She still lived in a world that praised usefulness. But she carried a different question now. Not only, what am I good for? But also, what kind of life am I protecting? Not only, who needs me? But also, where can I remain whole? Not only, how can I be chosen? But also, what if I already belong to the Tao before anyone chooses me? And in the darkening valley, beneath the stars, the old tree stood quietly behind her, twisted, unmarketable, unashamed, alive. Gentle reflection. Maybe tonight, this story is here for you. Maybe you have been measuring yourself by how useful you are to others, how much you can do, how much you can carry, how much you can give, how much pain you can hide, how long you can keep going without asking for rest. Maybe you have been praised for being strong, but not protected when you were tired. Maybe you have been needed, but not truly seen. Maybe you have confused exhaustion with virtue. Maybe you have believed that if you are not useful, you are not valuable. But the old tree offers another way. It does not say, become lazy. It does not say, care for nothing. It does not say, turn away from love. It simply reminds us that a living being is more than a tool. You are not here only to be efficient. You are not here only to be pleasing. You are not here only to be strong. You are not here only to be chosen, used, praised, measured, or approved. There is a place in you that existed before achievement, before success, before failure, before anyone decided what you should become. That place is quiet. It does not need applause. It does not need to be useful, to be real. Sometimes the world values the straight tree because it can be cut into beams, but the crooked tree survives long enough to shelter birds. Sometimes the world praises the person who never stops giving, but the soul may be asking for shade. Sometimes what looks like failure is actually protection. Sometimes what the world rejects is what allows you to remain whole. So tonight, let yourself rest beneath the useless tree. Let the old need to prove yourself loosen. Let the question, am I enough, grow quiet for a while. You do not need to become more impressive before you are allowed to breathe. You do not need to justify your existence with productivity. You do not need to turn every wound into wisdom tonight. You do not need to be useful to everyone in order to be worthy of peace. Let the stars be stars. Let the tree be a tree. Let the body be tired. Let the heart be honest. If sadness comes, let it sit beside you in the shade. If fear comes, let it rest its back against the old trunk. If shame comes, do not hand it an axe. Do not let it cut you down. Just breathe. Just remain. The Tao does not hurry the mountain. It does not shame the river for bending. It does not ask the old tree to become straight. And perhaps it is not asking you to become someone else tonight. Perhaps, for now, it is enough to be here, breathing, listening, resting, alive. And if this story brought you even a little peace, you are welcome to return whenever the night feels heavy. Until then, may you remember the old tree. May you remember the shade it gave. May you remember that what cannot be used by the world may still be deeply held by life. And may you rest, not because you have earned rest, but because you are living, and living things need gentleness.